Well, it's time to shift our focus back on our junior hockey team. I'm definitely going to say things are starting to look a little bleak. I also do have some updates to share in this episode. You know what I mean, as it's time for another episode of... Hi there, it's Brett Hornby here, and welcome back to another episode of my Calgary Hitmen in 6. We're up to Season 4. This will be episode number 9. As we'll talk about games 43 to 48 in the 2021-22 WHL regular season, as now we're getting to the final 20 games of the regular season. I'm going to have to say things are slowly starting to look a little bleak for our Calgary Hitmen, as coming into this episode they were already on a 2-game losing streak, and they were still wrapping up their trip in Saskatchewan. All over the province of Saskatchewan is, but I think it might be a struggle for the team to get to the end of the regular season and get into playoffs. And well, speaking of playoffs, we'll talk about some news updates that the league has announced about what format they're going to use. So before I get into my notes and get into the episode, if you want to follow along with this Calgary sports fan's journey, home of the Flames, Hitmen, Roughnecks, and Stampeders, I mostly do talk Calgary sports on my YouTube channel where I recap games and stories and that. But when I have time, I also do some personal vlogs, attempt to comedy, and also do share my experience. So I say on the road. We're at a sporting event and I've done some vlogging to go. So if that all sounds like me interested to watch, to follow along with this Calgary sports fan's journey, you know what you do, just to make sure you hit like, subscribe, and also my other social links down in the description below. So let's bring up my notes and let's take a look at how the last 6 games went for the Calgary Hitmen. As I say, sometimes, life and work gets in the way that sometimes these episodes are a little delayed, so this was another one of those. Quickly was able just to get it done so I can get it uploaded and move it on to the next 6 games after this episode. So if we go back for game 43, this happened on Friday, February 11th, as the Calgary Hitmen were still in Saskatchewan, continuing on their Saskatchewan road trip as they were taking on the Regina Pats at the Brent Center, 6 p.m. puck drop. So how did things go in Regina? Keep in mind, Regina has Connor Bedard, who is favored to be the first overall pick in 2023, the NHL Inch Draft. Well, I'm going to say Regina had their way with the Calgary Hitmen, as they definitely started off with a much stronger pace this game. And they also did score the first 2 goals in the first period. It wasn't until the 14:42 minute mark of the first period that Regina scored the first goal, as Logan Nyhoff, who got his 15th of the season on the power play, to make it 1-0 for the Pats. And then speaking of Connor Bedard, well, he definitely had a big game in this game, as he did score late in the first period at 19:38. He did score his 26th of the season to make it 2-0 for the Pats, and that's how things stood after the first period, with the Pats up 2-0. Also, we'll highlight in this one that late in the first period you had Blake Allen for Calgary, as well as Easton Armstrong. They fought at the 18:43 minute mark, so it was 2-0 for Regina after the first period. So things were not looking good for Calgary early on. However, in the second period, Calgary Hitmen was able to play the Regina Pats just a little. However, the Connor Bedard show continues. Actually, he started off the show in the second period 38 seconds in, so he scored late in the first period and scored early in the second period, 39 seconds in, for his second of the game, 27th of the season. So Regina took a 3-0 lead, and after that, that was pretty much it for the Calgary Hitmen. They did get a few more shots on net in the second period, but that was the only scoring to report in the second period. So Regina now takes a 3-0 lead going into the third period. And then going to the third period, Regina Pats definitely kept their pace, showing that they were the better team. On this night, well, Connor Bedard, I gotta say, the show continued once again, as he did score the hat-trick, his third goal of the game. Natural hat-trick, for he scored 3 straight goals, as he scored his third of the game, 28th of the season at 4:24 of the third period. So Regina took a 4-0 lead at that point in the third period. And then Riker Evans scored his 11th of the season for the Pats at 15:35 to make it 5-0 for Regina. Did the Calgary Hitmen able to get a goal at all in this game? Unfortunately, they did not. So ultimately, the Regina Pats won this game 5-0 to take this one. And the Calgary Hitmen also got into some rough stuff late in the third period, as you got Zach Funk and Matthew Sutter. Each had and Tyson Galloway were all involved in the scrum with 10 minutes gone. As cross-checking, no one else got thrown out. Well, actually, they were sticking up for Connor Bedard, as he took a cross-checking penalty as well. But the Calgary Hitmen got in more trouble with the 10-minute misconduct by Tyson Galloway, so it was definitely a frustrating game for the Calgary Hitmen, as they lost this one 5-0. And the Regina Pats also shot the Calgary Hitmen 33-24 in this one. So I'm just going to say, leading the way, obviously, for the game is Connor Bedard, who had 3 goals for the Regina Pats and 2 assists, so he was a part in all 5 goals, so he had a 5-point game. And then he also got Riker Evans, who had a goal and 2 assists, and as well as Tanner House, who got 2 assists for the Regina Pats. So those are the players that stood out for the Regina Pats. So when it comes to the goaltending story of this game, it was Evan Bonner-Sure who actually was in net for Calgary. He made 28 saves, while it was K10 Bryan who had 24 saves for the shutout for the Regina Pats. So this episode did not start off on a good note for the Calgary Hitmen, as they lost 5-0 to Regina. So that was game number 43. So game 44 just happened the next night on Saturday, February 12th. As the Calgary Hitmen were still on the road in Saskatchewan. This time they were taking on the Moose Jaw Warriors. This was a 6 p.m. puck drop at Mosaic Place. So how did things go for Calgary and Moose Jaw? Well, actually things did start off on a good note for the Calgary Hitmen, as they did open up the scoring in this one. This happened at the 6:34 minute mark of the first period, as it was Riley Fither-Schultz who got his 22nd goal of the season to make it 1-0 for Calgary. And that was actually all the scoring that happened in the first period. So Calgary did start off better in Moose Jaw with a goal, taking a 1-0 lead. Going to the second period, though, Moose Jaw definitely came back stringing, outplaying the Calgary Hitmen. They also outshot the Calgary Hitmen 12-5 in the second period. And as well, the Moose Jaw Warriors definitely feasted on a big second period in this one. Well, it was at the 3:58 minute mark of the second period. The Moose Jaw Warriors did tie up the game, as it was Braden Younger who got his 23rd goal of the season to make it 1-1 at that point. And then it was at 7:49 the second period. It was Ryder Korzak who got his 18th goal of the season to put the Moose Jaw Warriors up 2-1 at that point. And then Braden Yeager, who got his second of the game at the 12:08 minute mark of the third period, 24th of the season. So now the Moose Jaw Warriors did score 3 goals in the second period to take a 3-1 lead, and that's how things stood after the second period, with the Moose Jaw Warriors up 3-1. However, there wasn't too many penalties in this game, not until you get into the third period. So going into the third period, the Calgary Hitmen pushed back against the Moose Jaw Warriors. They outshot the Warriors 18-7 in the third period alone. However, just like the last game where Connor Bedard scored a hat-trick for the Moose Jaw Warriors. Well, this time it was Brady Yeager. It was the Brady Yeager show for the Moose Jaw Warriors, as he did score a short-handed goal for the hat-trick in the empty net when the Calgary Hitmen pulled the goalie a little early, but it was at 16:46. So Moose Jaw took a 4-1 lead at that point. However, with 14 seconds to go into the game, there were definitely some rough stuff, as you had Zach Funk, and there was Niski and Myra Steele querying with the fighting, with as well as Desmond Hunt, and Ryan Nevin for the Moose Jaw Warriors. So there were definitely some rough stuff at the end of this game. So the Calgary Hitmen definitely are showing their frustration, as they ultimately lost this one 4-1 to the Moose Jaw Warriors. However, they did outshoot the Moose Jaw Warriors 32-28, but ultimately it was the second period that sunk them. So leading the way in this game, obviously, was Brady Yeager, who got the 3 goals for the Moose Jaw Warriors, and also Jager Fergus, who got 3 assists for the Moose Jaw Warriors. So that's who stood out for the Warriors in this one, as well as Denton Mariuk, who got 2 assists. So the goaltending story of this game, once again, actually was Ethan Ballachur, who was in that because Braden Peters wasn't dressed at this one. So he made 24 saves for the Moose Jaw Warriors. Well, when it comes to the goaltending story for the Moose Jaw Warriors, it was Jackson Younger who made 31 saves for the Warriors. So the Calgary Hitmen, they ultimately came out empty-handed in Saskatchewan, as they have now lost 4 straight at this point. So that was Game 44. So Game 45, this happened on Wednesday, February the 16th, as the Calgary Hitmen were taking on the Moose Jaw Warriors again, but this time back at home, but they're home away from home at the 7 Chiefs Sportsplex at Tutina Nation. That was a 7 p.m. puck drop. So did the Calgary Hitmen had any better luck against the Moose Jaw Warriors back in their home away from home? Well, the first period, both teams definitely came out stronger, had a wide open game, and I'm going to say both teams definitely traded goals in this one. First, it was Jager Fergus who got the first goal of the game for the Moose Jaw Warriors at his 28th of the season on the power play at 6:37. So Moose Jaw did strike first in this game. However, it was Carter Hemchuk who got his first goal of the season at 13:05 to tie it up for the Calgary Hitmen. And that's actually how things stood after the first period, with the game tied up at 1-1. So that's how things stood after the first period. There were definitely a lot of roughing and too many men and cross-checking penalties in the first period. So maybe some of that rough stuff that carried over from the game in Moose Jaw into this one right here, but no fighting so far. So we had a 1-1 game going into the second period. So going into the second period, things definitely tightened up a little bit defensively on both sides. And actually there was only 1 goal to report for this one, as it was Damian Hunt who got his 14th goal of the season for the Moose Jaw Warriors. This happened late in the second period at 18:23. So Moose Jaw took a 2-1 lead at that point in the game, and that's how things stood after the second period, with Moose Jaw up 2-1. Zach Funk also took a major penalty for cross-checking from behind and got a game misconduct. However, Calgary was able to kill off that 5-minute penalty. So we had 2-1 Moose Jaw going into the third period. So now going into the third period, Calgary was definitely pressing back harder, looking for the equalizer to get back in this game. However, first it was Maximus Swanner who got his 5th goal of the season for the Moose Jaw Warriors further in the third period at 4:14 to make it 3-1. Excuse me, for the Moose Jaw Warriors. However, the Calgary Hitmen, they definitely did not get rewarded for any of their hard work in the third period. Actually, the Calgary Hitmen was able to get another goal to make this game a little closer, but that did not come until 19:42 of the third period, as it was Sean Chagall who got his 20th goal of the season to make it 3-2, and obviously running out of time. Ultimately, it was the Moose Jaw Warriors that took this one 3-2. So the Calgary Hitmen now have dropped 5 straight at this point. So leading away for the Calgary Hitmen, after saying that the Calgary Hitmen outshot the Moose Jaw Warriors 40-30 in this one. So wasn't for the lack of effort, but that's definitely been the Hitmen's luck lately. So anyway, for the Calgary Hitmen, the only player that had a multi-point game for the Calgary Hitmen was Cale Zimmerman, the captain, who had 2 assists. So when it comes to the Moose Jaw Warriors, the only one that had a multi-point game was Ryder Korzak, who had 2 assists for the Warriors. So when it comes to the goaltending story of this game, it was Ethan Bonaventure who was in that. He's definitely getting a lot more starts. I was not quite sure, I didn't see what happened to Braden Peters, but Alex Gallant was dressed as the backup for the Calgary Hitmen for these few games. Ethan Bonaventure made 27 saves for the Calgary Hitmen, while it was Jackson Unger who made 38 saves for the Moose Jaw Warriors. So that was game 45, as the Calgary Hitmen still have not found the win column yet in this episode. Things were not going to get any easier for game number 46. This happened on Friday, February 18th, as the Calgary Hitmen were still at home at their home away from home at the 7T Sportsplex at Tutina Nation, 7 p.m. puck drop, as the Calgary Hitmen were hosting the Winnipeg Ice. And the Winnipeg Ice are definitely one of the top teams in the Western Hockey League. So how did the Calgary Hitmen do in this one? Well, they definitely got outplayed in this one, to put it lightly. But actually the Calgary Hitmen did actually score first in this one, despite being outplayed, as it was Riley Fitter-Schultz who got his 23rd of the season at the 13:38 minute mark. Actually, that was the only goal for the Calgary Hitmen in the first period, the only goal for the game, as the Calgary Hitmen took a 1-0 lead after the first period. However, they were outshot 16-12 in the first period, but the Calgary Hitmen got outplayed even more in the second and third periods, shall I say. Excuse me. So excuse me. So now going into the second period, things were getting back to reality for the Calgary Hitmen, as it was 18-9 shots for Winnipeg in the second period. However, the Winnipeg Ice was only able to get 1 goal themselves in the second period, as it was Connor Geekie got his 13th goal of the season at the 150 minute mark. So Calgary scored 1 in the first period, Winnipeg scored 1 in the second period. So we had a 1-1 win, 1-1 game going into the third period. However, going into the third period, the Winnipeg Ice definitely pressed back even more, as they outshot the Calgary Hitmen 21-8, and they definitely got 2 goals, 1 early and 1 late in the third period. First, the second goal for the Winnipeg Ice went to Zachary Benson at exactly the 2-minute mark, his 15th of the season. So Winnipeg took a 2-1 lead at that point in the game. And then Zachary Benson got his second goal of the game, 16th of the season, at 17:52. So ultimately, the Calgary Hitmen definitely got outplayed in this one and lost this one 3-1. And when you look at the shots, it was 55-29 for the Winnipeg Ice. I think all things considered, I think it was very fortunate the Calgary Hitmen only lost 3-1 to Winnipeg Ice. As I mentioned, they are one of the top teams in the league. So leading the way in this one, well, no multi-point game for the Calgary Hitmen, but it was Zachary Benson who got 2 goals for the Winnipeg Ice, and it was Connor Geekie who got a goal and 2 assists for the Ice. He was a part in all 3 goals. So when it comes to the goaltending story of this game, it was Evan Bonaventure who was in net for the Ice, for the Hitmen. He made 52 saves, so he had a pretty good game for the Calgary Hitmen. However, it was Daniel Hauser who made 28 saves for the Winnipeg Ice. So that brings up the losing streak up to 6 games for the Calgary Hitmen. So how do they do with 2 more games to go in this episode? But that was game number 46 with that big litmus test game for the Winnipeg Ice. So game 47, this happened on Saturday, February the 20th, as the Calgary Hitmen were at home back in their regular headquarters at the Scotiabank Saddledome. That was a 4 p.m. puck drop. As mentioned, they were hosting the Saskatoon Blades. And this one, well, Saskatoon definitely outplayed the Calgary Hitmen for much of this game, and actually the Saskatoon Blades did open up the scoring for the Blades, as he scored the first goal of the game, went to Trevor Wong, his 10th goal of the season at 9:14, and that's the only goal to report in the first period. So the Calgary Hitmen were down 1-0 to the Saskatoon Blades after the first period. There was also some rough stuff to report in this one, as it was on to blood, and Blake Young, who had a fighting penalty at the 13:46 minute mark of the first period. So that was the other thing to highlight that happened in the first period. So the Blades were up 1-0 at that point. Going into the second period, though, the Calgary Hitmen was able to get back into this one, as it was Zach Funk who scored a power play goal, his 16th of the season at 5:30 to make it a 1-1 game. And that's the only goal to report in the second period, as we had a 1-1 game going into the third period. There was less fisticuffs or any rough stuff to highlight in the penalty park. So going into the third period, I'm going to say the Saskatoon Blades definitely had a little more jump to the game and ultimately did put this one away. It was Tristan Robbins who got his 22nd goal of the season for the Saskatoon Blades on the power play at 9:17 to make it 2-1 at that point of the game. And then I guess you could say the dagger really got going later in the third period, as it was Kyle Snovic who scored 2 goals himself within a 2-minute span. First, he got his 31st of the season to make it 3-1 for the Blades at 12:24. And then he got his second goal of the game shorthanded at 14:42. So ultimately, the Saskatoon Blades took a 4-1 lead in the 5-minute span, where the Blades scored 3 goals. And ultimately, it was the Saskatoon Blades that took this game 4-1. So now the Calgary Hitmen have dropped 7 in a row at this point. No one had a multi-point game for the Calgary Hitmen, obviously with 1 goal. But leading the way for the Saskatoon Blades, it was Kyle Snovic, who had 2 goals and assist, as well as Tristan Robbins, who got a goal and assist. Those are those 2 multi-point getters for the Saskatoon Blades. So when it comes to the goaltending story of this game, it was Evan Bonature. It was a net for Calgary. He made 31 saves, while for the Saskatoon Blades, it was Ethan Chadwick, who made 23 saves for the Blades. Ethan Chadwick, as I meant to say. So as I say, the Blades won this one 4-1, and ultimately that was game number 47. And the Calgary Hitmen, as I say, they're now on a 7-game losing streak at this stage of the season. So game 48, the last game that we'll talk about in this episode before we move on to other business. This game happened on Wednesday, February the 23rd. This was the stop bullying game that they had. I guess they must have rescheduled it, because in past years it was like at 11 o'clock in the morning, and school-age kids and kids all wearing their pink shirts. Well, this game did not play until 6 p.m. as the Calgary Hitmen were hosting the Prince Albert Raiders. And I'm going to say this game definitely didn't have much action. Ultimately, the only goal of this game, there was only 1 goal in this game, and that went to the Prince Albert Raiders, unfortunately. And it happened at the 12:45 minute mark of the first period, as it was Evan Herman who got his 19th goal of the season. To me, one other thing, as I mentioned, if that was the only goal of the game, the Prince Albert Raiders took a 1-0 lead and ultimately won this one 1-0, because there was no goal scoring to report in the second or third period. So it was definitely a goaltender's duel in this one. So I said the Prince Albert Raiders won 1-0. The shots were even at 26 apiece. So as mentioned, the Calgary Hitmen, things are starting to look a little bleak now that they have an 8-game losing streak on their hands. So when it comes to the goaltending starting game, well, Braden Peters, he was actually back in net for the Calgary Hitmen, because he made 25 saves in this one. However, it was Tikan Cheka who was in net for the Prince Albert Raiders. He made 26 saves for the shutout. So, as I say, definitely has been a rough match for the Calgary Hitmen, as they have lost all 6 games, and then the previous 2, so they're on an 8-game losing streak, as I mentioned. So they did not win any games in this episode. It definitely was a rough stretch for the Calgary Hitmen. So that was game number 48. So the Calgary Hitmen, after 48 games with 20 games to go in the regular season, they have 18 wins. They have 23 losses, 5 overtime losses, and 2 shootout losses. So they have 43 points, which puts them 4th in the Central Division and 8th in the Eastern Conference. And that's one thing you should take note, 8th in the Eastern Conference, because the league actually announced that the Western Hockey League playoffs for this upcoming season will be going to the conference format, which some would say we like the conference format a little more because you get the good teams that potentially play later in the playoffs, but then you don't hype up divisional rivalries at the same time. So we always have that debate. So the conference format will be back with the Western Hockey League for this upcoming season, which means seeing where the Calgary Hitmen are, I'm not too sure if it's going to be much of a reward to make the playoffs to either draw the Edmonton Oil Kings or the Winnipeg Ice in the first round. But that is one news update to talk about. The second one is some games have been rescheduled to accommodate, all the scheduling changes throughout the season, especially this past season. Well, the game that originally was scheduled on Sunday, March the 20th, as the Edmonton Oil Kings were going to host the Calgary Hitmen, that game has now been moved to Sunday, April the 10th. And another Calgary Hitmen game that was originally scheduled for Thursday, March 24th, where the Calgary Hitmen will be hosting the Red Deer Rebels. Well, that has now been rescheduled to Wednesday, April the 18th. And then that New Year's Day game, where the Calgary Hitmen were supposed to host the Lethbridge Hurricanes, that now has been rescheduled to Sunday, April the 17th, which is going to be the last game of the regular season. And then the league also mentioned that if there's any tiebreaker games that are necessary to decide any playoff seeding, that will happen on Tuesday, April the 19th, if necessary. So that's the news updates, is that we're going back to the conference format for the playoffs, and the couple games have been rescheduled. So if you take a look at the quick stats and standings, shall we, for the Calgary Hitmen, like the top point getters for the team, Ryder Fitter-Schultz is still leading the way for the Hitmen, as he has 23 goals, 30 assists, and 53 points. Second in scoring is Sean Shigell. He has 20 goals, 25 assists for 45 points. Third is Blake Stevenson. He has 17 goals, 25 assists for 42 points, although a combination from the trade. Fourth in scoring is Zach Funk. He has 16 goals, 12 assists for 28 points. Then around the top 5 is the captain in Cale Zimmerman. He has 10 goals, 11 assists for 21 points. And then when it comes to the goaltending story of the Calgary Hitmen, well, you got Braden Peters. He has 16-16 record. He has 2 shutouts. He has a 286 goals against average and a 908 save percentage. And then when it comes to Ethan Bonaventura, well, he definitely took a hit in this one, especially picking up the slack for this past round of games. He has a 2-7 record, and he has a 359 goals against average and an 885 save percentage. So that is another factor that we missed Braden Peters. Not sure if it was an injury or any academic reasons. So that is the player stats part. Now the standings. Well, first we'll take a look at the divisions, and then we'll look at how the conference shake down for any potential matchups. Because now that we know we're going to the conference format, so starting in the Western Conference with the U.S. Division, well, Everett Silvertips have already punched their ticket to the playoffs. After 49 games, they have 77 points. Second place, Sport Winterhawks, they have 69 points in 50 games. Then in third place, Seattle Thunderbirds, they have 65 points in 46 games. Fourth place is the Tri-City Americans, they have 33 points in 48 games. Then in fifth place is the Spokane Chiefs, they have 31 points in 48 games. Now the BC Division, well, punching their ticket already to the playoffs is the Canada's Blazers. So you have the Everett Silvertips and the Canada's Blazers. They're already in the WHL Playoffs. So first place in the BC Division. So Canada's Blazers, 72 points in 50 games. Then the Kelowna Rockets, they have 62 points in 45 games. And then the Prince George Cougars, third place, they have 41 points in 49 games. Vancouver Warriors, fourth, they have 40 points, 46 games. And last place is Victoria Royals. They have 33 points in 49 games. So that's the Western Conference looking division. So now if we look at the Eastern Conference by division, right now in the Central Division, this is where the Calgary Hitmen are. Well, first place is the Edmonton Oil Kings. They got 75 points in 50 games. Second place, the Red Deer Rebels. They have 65 points in 49 games. Third place is the Saskatchewan Broncos. They have 44 points in 50 games. Fourth place, you got the Calgary Hitmen, where we are. We have 43 points in 48 games. Fifth place, you got the Lethbridge Hurricanes. They have 43 points in only 46 games. And then in sixth place, last place in the Central, is the Madison Tigers. They had 22 points in 47 games. So now if we look at the East Division, which has definitely been a much stronger division, I should say, Winnipeg Ice lead the way. They have 69 points in 44 games. Second place, the Moose Jaw Warriors. They have 63 points in 51 games. Third place is the Saskatchewan Blades. They have 57 points in 48 games. Fourth place, Brandon Wheat Kings, 57 points in 46 games. Fifth place is the Prince Albert Raiders, 41 points in 48 games. And the last place, Regina Pats, they have 40 points in 45 games. So if you look at now that we know we're going into the conference format, so potential playoff matchups that we could have in the Western Conference, you would have Everett would be hosting the Victoria Royals for the 1-8. And then you got Kamloops hosting the Vancouver Giants for the 2-7. And then the 3-6, you got Portland hosting Prince George. And then the 4-5, you got Seattle hosting Kelowna. So those are potential playoff matchups right now. In Eastern Conference, well, we would have a battle of Alberta. But based on how the Hitmen match up with the Oil Kings, I don't think it'd be much of a battle. But right now, Edmonton Oil Kings would be hosting the Calgary Hitmen. Second place, you'll have the Winnipeg Ice hosting the Swift Current Broncos. And then the 3-6, you'll have Red Deer hosting Brandon. And then in the 4-5, you got Moose Jaw hosting Saskatoon. So that could be potential playoff matchups, but we still have 20 games to go in the Western Hockey League for much of the teams, including my Calgary Hitmen. So now, looking ahead to the next 6 games, which will be the next episode for the Calgary Hitmen. It's not going to get that much easier, as they have a couple more games at all. Then they're going to spend a lot more time on the road. And I'm going to say, I recall that game against Brandon and Winnipeg will also get rescheduled later in the month. So we're going to see a lot more Calgary Hitmen on the road here at the same time. Unless I just need to update my note there. So looking ahead for Game 49, this will be on Friday, February the 25th, as the Calgary Hitmen are on the road, as they be taking on the Lethbridge Hurricanes. That'll be a 7 p.m. puck drop at the MX Center. Then Game 50, this will be on Sunday, February 27th. The Calgary Hitmen will be back at home, as they'll be hosting the Regina Pats, so they'll get to see Connor Bedard again. That'll be a 4 p.m. puck drop at the Scotiabank Saddledome. And the Game 51, this will be on Friday, March the 4th. As the Calgary Hitmen will be on the road, they'll be taking on the Edmonton Oil Kings. That will be a 7 p.m. puck drop at Rogers Place. And in Game 52, this will be on Saturday, March the 5th, the next night, as the Calgary Hitmen will be hosting the Edmonton Oil Kings. That will be a 2 p.m. puck drop at the Scotiabank Saddledome. So, got a late night and an afternoon game, so it'll be interesting how that goes. Potential playoff preview. And then the Calgary Hitmen on for Game 53. They go on the bus all the way to Winnipeg on Tuesday, March the 8th, as the Calgary Hitmen will be in Winnipeg at the Wayne Fleming Arena, 6 p.m. puck drop. Yep, the same Wayne Fleming that used to be assistant coach of the Calgary Flames. And then Game 54 to wrap up, which will be the next episode, will be on Wednesday, March 9th, as the Calgary Hitmen will be on the road against the Brandon Wheat Kings. That'll be at Westovia Place, 6 p.m. puck drop. Those games were the originally scheduled game. If I recall, after those games in Winnipeg and Brandon, I think the Calgary Hitmen have a couple more games in Saskatchewan, and then those games got rescheduled for Winnipeg and Brandon, so they're going to be on a nice long road trip here in the next few weeks, so that's definitely going to make or break if we have any chance to still make the playoffs. But looking at where things stand right now, we'll be either missing the playoffs or making the playoffs to get outmatched by the Edmonton Oil Kings or the Winnipeg Ice, but that's just being realistic right now, but that's just the nature of the beast with junior hockey. You only get a couple seasons with a couple good players before they move on to other things. So anyway, if you want to follow along with this Calgary sports fans journey, home to Flames, Hitmen, Roughnecks, and Stampeders, and mostly do talk Calgary sports on my YouTube channel where we recap games and stories. If you, let's say, also do a variety of non-sports content like personal logs, attempt to comedy, and else do share series say I'm on the road or a sporting event. So if that all sounds like be interesting to watch, do follow along with this Calgary sports fans journey. You know what you do, just make sure you hit like, subscribe. I also have my other social links down in the description below for other ways you can follow me. And of course I have my second channel in Brett Hornby Shorts, where I exclusively put my short form content on there. So I appreciate it. Like and subscribe both here on my main channel as well as my second channel. So I'm going to say, let's go Hitmen. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.